Hello everyone, my name is Pratik and today we are going to discuss about inflation. So under inflation we are going to deal with three subtopics. First would be the types of inflation, then we'll be discussing about what is the role of RBI in targeting the inflation, and the number third would be what are the instruments used by RBI to control the inflation. So first of all, let us try to understand what is inflation. So according to definition, inflation is the rise in the price levels of most of the goods and services over a sustained period of time. So what does that mean? So suppose I go to a market to buy 1 kilogram of onions. Now the vendor had charged me rupees 40 rupees per kilogram. Okay. But in the previous month, the same vendor had charged me for around rupees 30 for that same 1 kilogram of onion. So as we can see, there is a rise of 10 rupees per kilogram within a month. So this rise in the price of the onion is basically the inflation. So coming back to the definition again, inflation is the rise in the price level of goods and services over a sustained period of time. Okay. So now what does inflation indicates? Let us take another example. Suppose you go to McDonald's with $5 in the year 2016. So in the year 2016, with that $5, you bought a jumbo size burger. But now in the current year of 2022, with the same amount of $5, you would not be able to buy the same burger size, right? Or the jumbo burger. So what does that mean? It means there is a decrease in the purchasing power of the currency, or the value of the currency has fallen, since we are not getting the same amount of product with the same currency that we have taken with the McDonald's. Okay, moving on, then we have inflation rate. So as we all know, we have seen in the news that current inflation rate is let's say 7%, 8%, 9%. In some countries it is 4%. So what does that mean? How is it calculated? So that is what inflation rate is. So inflation rate is the percentage change in the previous or the price level from the previous period. So let us take an example to better understand this. Suppose the price of the mustard oil in the year 2021 was around rupees 100. Now in the year 2022, the price has rose to around rupees 120 per liter. So what would be the inflation rate? Inflation rate in our case would be 20%. But how do we calculate that 20%? So there is a formula for that, which is price in the year 2 minus price in the year 1 divided by price in the year 1 into 100. So in our case, price in the year 2 would be price in the year 2022, which is rupees 120, minus price in the year 1, which is price in the year 2021, which is rupees 100 in our case, divided by rupees 100 into 100. So that will give us the value of 20%. So that is how inflation rate is calculated. Now moving on, what if there is fall in the prices? So which is very authentic question. Again, there are two terms associated with the fall in the prices. First is the deflation, then there is disinflation. Keep in mind that disinflation and deflation both are interrelated, right? So first of all, let us discuss deflation. So deflation is nothing but it is the opposite of inflation. What was inflation? Inflation was the general rise in the price of most of the goods and services over a sustained period of time. So what will be deflation? It will be the opposite of it, which means it is the decrease in the overall price level for a sustained period of time. In this case, the inflation becomes negative. For example, if a basket of fruits was sold to us under rupees 50 for a consistent basis, let's say for 4 or 5 years, then we may say that the economy has entered into deflation stage. Alright, so the next term which is associated with inflation is the disinflation, which means the reduction in the rate of inflation. Although keep in mind that disinflation is the first stage after inflation if the price starts falling, and if disinflation remains unchecked, then it will lead to deflation. So basically disinflation is the temporary situation where the prices of the commodity starts falling. Okay, so moving on, then we have the types of inflation. Okay, Alright, so I have divided the inflation on the basis of two types. First is on the basis of causes, then I have divided on the basis of rate of increase. So on the basis of causes, I have further divided into four more categories. The number one is the demand pull inflation, then there is cost push inflation, then there is deficit induced inflation, and there is wage push inflation. Okay, so I'm only giving the basic details about the demand pull and cost push and all the other types of inflation here. In the upcoming slides, I'll be dealing with them in details. Okay, alright, so first of all is the demand pull inflation. We know the demand, as the term suggests, it is the inflation which is caused because of the demand side factors. So when the aggregate demand is greater than the aggregate supply, it results to demand pull inflation. So what does that mean? What is aggregate demand and what is aggregate supply, right? So when aggregate demand, so the demand is done on the end of the consumer's part, whereas the supply is a factor which is done on the production side or the industrial side, right? So when the demand of the consumers are increasing day by day, but the supply side factor is not able to fulfill that demand, the resultant inflation is the demand pull inflation. Okay, so moving on, then we have cost push inflation. In this category, the demand remains unchanged or it is nearly constant, but the aggregate supply still falls. The aggregate supply is unable to fulfill that demand. So cost push inflation is basically associated with the supply side factor, whereas demand pull inflation is related with the demand side factor. Okay. Then there is deficit induced inflation, which is any inflation that is caused because of the deficit in public expenditure. I'll be explaining them in the detail. So then after that we have wage push inflation, which is a combination of demand pull and the cost push inflation. Alright. So then we have on the basis of the rate of increase. So on the basis of rate of increase, we have five types of inflation. So first is the creeping inflation, which lies in the range of 1 to 4%, and the rate of inflation here slowly increases over the period of time. Then we have the walking inflation, which lies in the range of 4 to 10%. Under this category, the inflation starts to rise moderately and not very frequently. Then we have the running inflation, which lies in the range of 10 to 20%. Then we have the galloping inflation. Under this inflation, the inflation usually lies in the double or triple digits of 20, 100 or 200% a year. Then we have the worst case scenario, which is the hyperinflation, which is the stage of very, very, very high rate of inflation and is the worst possible case for any economy. The best example was Venezuela. Okay. So moving on, then we have in detail the demand pull inflation. So first of all, let us try to understand what is demand pull inflation. As I have already said, that a situation where the aggregate demand is greater than the aggregate supply. In that case, it will be coined as, or it will be termed as, demand pull inflation. In other words, we can say there is more amount of money which are chasing too few amount of goods, right? It occurs in the economy when the economy is growing faster than the long run trend rate of growth. So what does long run trend rate of growth means? Suppose now the India was growing at a rate of 4%. Our GDP was growing at a rate of 4 or 5%. But suddenly the economy started growing at the rate of 7 to 8%. So that is what exactly is long run trend rate of growth. So when that happens, that is when the economy starts growing at a faster rate than the long run trend rate, then it may be said that demand pull inflation was one of the factor behind it, right? So now let us understand the causes of demand pull inflation. So number one is the population growth. So before we move further, let us keep in mind again that demand pull inflation is always caused when the aggregate demand is greater than the aggregate supply. Okay. So how does population growth contributes to demand pull inflation? Let us understand that. So if there is rise in the population, right, there will be more and more stomachs to be fed. As a result, there will be more and more demand from the consumer's end. Now, if the demand is increasing, but say for any XYZ reasons, the factories or the industries are not able to fulfill that demand, what will happen is they will increase the price to earn more and more profit. since the demand is more. Now as they increase the price of the goods and the services, we can say that it is one of the causes for the demand pull inflation, right? Then there is technical innovations. So the best example for the technical innovations would be a smartphone. As we all know, in today's scenario, be it India, be it any other country, be it any rich family or be it any poor family, we have multiple smartphones at our houses, right? So there could be multiple reasons of holding so many number of smartphones. But since with the passing days, the innovations within the smartphone is increasing. How? Let's say maybe because the camera of the quality is increasing, maybe because the operating system is getting faster, maybe because the specifications are getting upgraded. So as a result of these technical innovations, again the demand is increasing, right? So with the increase in the demand, what will ultimately happen is there will be rise in the prices, since companies, what will they will try to do, they will try to earn more and more profit because there is high demand in the market. So we have seen in the recent days the prices of the smartphone have increased rapidly. Nowadays, I don't want to mention any company, but there are companies who are selling smartphone over 1 lakh rupees, isn't it? So why does that happen? Because the demand is increasing, because the demand of that smartphones are increasing. In a similar way, the third number is the increase in the purchasing power, which is also one of the cause for demand pull inflation. So let us understand how does this affect inflation. So suppose if there is high purchasing power, what is high purchasing power? It takes place when the employers are giving more amount of salaries, are funding more to their employees. So when they have more salary with themselves, what they will do, they will try to spend more on themselves, right? As a result of which their demand will be increasing. If the demand increases, the price will increase, as a result of which the inflation will take place. Similarly, if there is increase in the public expenditure. So what is public expenditure? Public expenditure is when government spends more on us, right? Government spends more on the infrastructure, government spends more on the road transport and everything. So when the government starts to spend more, what the citizens will do, they will start to demand more. When the citizen starts to demand more, ultimately the price of the cost of the productions, the price of the other factors of production will increase, as a result of which it will lead to demand pull inflation. Then there is cost push inflation. As I've already mentioned, that cost push inflation is associated with the supply side factors. Okay, so in this stage the demand remains unchanged, but the aggregate supply falls. But in the previous case, what happened was the demand was increasing, but the supply was not able to fulfill that demand. But in this case, the demand is nearly constant, but this aggregate supply is still falling. As a result of which, the inflation which is caused because of which is called cost push inflation. Now, the best example would be the Russia-Ukraine conflict. As we all know, there is an ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. So, we also know that the Ukraine is a major supplier of fertilizers, right, and vegetable oil, sunflower oil to India. Since because of this conflict between the Russia-Ukraine, there is a hit on the supply side of the Ukraine, because Ukraine has to feed their army first, right? Ukraine has to feed their citizens first. Only then they will be able to fulfill the obligations to India. But since because of this war, there is a hit on the supply side from the Ukraine, as a result of which there is an increase in the cost of production. Why? Because India has two alternatives. Either India should opt for any other countries to supply their goods and articles, or what India can do is India can increase the manufacturing or increase the production within the country itself. But somehow in either case the cost of production will be increased, since a major hit has been taken on the supply side. So this is one of the factors due to which cost push inflation can be taken place. Now, cost push inflation can also lead to lower economic growth and fall in the living standards. Okay. Now let us try to understand the causes of cost push inflation. So there are multiple reasons because of for the cost push inflations. I have pointed out few of them. First is the raw materials, then there is labor cost, there is lack of infrastructure. So let us try to understand this with the help of example. Suppose I take the lack of infrastructure as one of the causes. What will happen? So if there is lack of infrastructure, what does that mean is that the companies have lack in their infrastructure of production. That means if a company was able to produce 100 products per minute. Now due to increased demands, their infrastructure is not capable enough to fulfill that demand. So what will happen is they will try to induce more and more machineries into their production. So what will happen is their production cost is getting increased. Now due to this increase in the production cost, the companies have to earn their profit. So what will they do? They will pass on this high rise in the prices of the production cost over to the customers, as a result of which there is a hit on the supply side, as a result of which the prices are increasing, and hence this is associated with the cost push inflation. Similarly, when we see the increase in the wages, if there is increase in the wages to combat the current inflationary scenario, or maybe because of the fulfilling our luxurious needs, due to the increase in the wages, there will be increase in the production cost on the end of the company again, because they will have to be paid more and more amount of salaries, right, so that they do not leave their company and the production does not take a hit. Okay, so if there is increase in the wages, what will happen is there is increase in the production cost. Ultimately what will happen is they will try to pass on this to the end consumers, as a result of which the price will start increasing. Similarly, the direct taxes like VAT, higher interest rates and other factors are helpful for the cost push inflation. Then there is deficit induced inflation. So what is deficit induced inflation? Any inflation which is caused due to fiscal deficit is called deficit induced inflation, right? So how does the deficit induced affect the inflation? Let us try to understand that. So whenever government expenditure exceeds the revenue, right? So whenever the government spends more on the infrastructure, whenever government gives us more and more amount of benefit, but their earnings are less, then we call that as a fiscal deficit. Now due to this fiscal deficit, what will happen is government may ask the central bank to print additional amount of money. So when the central bank prints additional amount of money, there will be more and more supply of money in the market. So if there is more and more supply of the money in the market, we can say there is expansion of the credit facility. So if there is expansion of the credit facility, what will happen is people will be spending more, right? People will be investing more. So if they are investing more, ultimately what will happen is companies will start to earn more and more profit due to the increased demand, as a result of which the inflation may increase. So this is what deficit induced inflation is. Then there is wage push inflation. As I've already mentioned, that wage push inflation is a combination of demand pull and cost push inflation. Okay, so this can take place in two ways. So first is, let's say if the wages increases for the cost of the firm, that is they are paying more and more amount of money to their employees. So what will happen is this cost of production will be passed on to the end consumers, so that they can maintain their profit or they can earn more and more profit. So as a result of which there will be rise in the prices of the goods and the services, so which will ultimately lead to inflation. Okay, in a similar way, if the wages increases, if there are more and more amount of wages with the employees, what will they do? They will start to spend more and more money. If they start to spend more and more money, there will be more and more demand, there will be more and more consumption, as a result of which again what will the companies do? They will try to earn more and more profit, as a result of which the price will rise and ultimately it will lead to inflation, isn't it? Okay, so moving on, we have inflation on the basis of the rate of increase, under which the first is the creeping inflation. So under creeping inflation, it lies in the range of 1 to 4%. So it is usually the low inflation rate which is maintained over a longer period of time, and it is also necessary for the economic development. Then we have the walking inflation, which lies in the range of 4 to 10%. Under this category, the price starts to rise moderately. Also, it is the warning sign for government, because the prices are rising. If the inflation remains unchecked, what will happen is it will ultimately lead to running inflation, followed by the galloping inflation, and the worst case hyperinflation. Okay, so under walking inflation, the annual inflation rate is in the range of single digits. Okay, then we have running inflation. It is the rapid acceleration in the rate of rising prices. Also, it imposes significant costs on the economy. Then we have galloping inflation. The recent example for the galloping inflation would be seen in the Sri Lanka, where people have taken to the road to overthrow the current government, and in fact they have already done it, right? So why do the Sri Lankan citizens are protesting so much? Because the prices have increased so much that they are unable to buy anything. Even the supply of the basic necessities like cylinders, LPG gases are unable to. The government is unable to fulfill their demand. So as a result of which, the citizens are taking this step, right? So we may say that under this galloping inflation stage, the inflation is unchecked and uncontrolled, right? The plus money starts losing its value very fast. It remains an unstable economy. Then the government loses credibility because people have lost interest, or people have lost their faith in the government. Also, what will happen is investors will start to pull out the money from the economy, and investor starts to avoid the country. So why does investors avoid the country? If there is an unstable economy, if there is an unstable government, plus if there is a rise in the prices of the products, what will happen is people will not buy any food, or people will not buy any goods, people will not buy any kind of services from the government or from the any companies. So if they do not spend more and more amount of money, what will happen is there will be lesser demand. If there is lesser demand, there will be lesser profit for the companies, there will be lesser profit for the investors, right? So what will they do is they'll pull out the money because they are not earning any kind of profit. Then we have is the hyperinflation. It is the extreme case or the worst case for any economy or for any country, right? At this rate, the rate of inflation is very, very, very high, and money becomes almost worthless. The recent example of hyperinflation was seen in Venezuela, where the inflation was so high that it reached to 1.7 million percentage in the year 2018. So that is the worst case that a country can ever imagine, isn't it? Okay, moving on, we have inflation targeting. So now if the inflation is increasing day by day, it has to be struck down, it has to be maintained in a certain range. So who does that, right? It is usually done by the RBI. It is usually done by the central bank of any economy. So inflation targeting is the announcement of an official target range for inflation, and it is done by the central bank in an economy. Now this inflation targeting is the part of their monetary policy. In our case, the inflation targeting is done by the RBI, and it is a part of their monetary policy for maintaining a stable rate of inflation. So for this, now RBI cannot do anything on its own. As for maintaining this, they have to consult somewhere, right? So Government of India and RBI have signed the agreement on this monetary policy framework in the year February 2015, under which a decision was taken that the healthy range of inflation has to be maintained between a range of 2 to 6%, and the target for inflation should be 4% with a plus minus band of 2%. That is what healthy range of inflation exactly is. Now, according to Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, current rate of inflation in our country is 7.79% on an annual basis as of May 2022. Now, moving further, we have instruments used by the RBI. So in the previous slides, we have seen the inflation targeting, which is exactly the role of RBI in targeting the inflation. Now, what are the instruments used by RBI to control the inflation? Okay. So RBI basically uses two measures. One of them is the quantitative measures and the other is the qualitative measures. Since we all know quantitative means it has to do something with the numbers, and when we use the word qualitative, it means it is not associated with the numbers, but then RBI can impose various methods to control the inflation. So under quantitative measures, we have the bank rate, we have the reserve ratios, which include CRR and SLR, that means cash reserve ratio and statutory liquidity ratio. Then we have liquidity adjustment facility, that includes the repo rates, the reverse repo rates, the standing deposit facility rates. Then we have the marginal standing facility or MSF. Then we have the open market operations. So open market operations is nothing but the buying and selling of the government securities. Okay. Then we have the qualitative measures. So under qualitative measures, RBI implements moral suasions. Then they try to use the method of consumer credit regulations. They also use rationing of credit. They also use margin of requirements. So I'll be dealing in all of them in the upcoming slides. So before we move further, we need to understand two concepts associated with the upcoming slides, right? So first is the net demand and the time liabilities. So what are liabilities? Let's say I have a liability to pay 1000 rupees to one of my friend after a stipulated time, let's say within 2 days or within 3 days, right? Similarly, bank also have a liability on them to pay back your amount whatever you have deposited with them, isn't it? So liabilities of bank includes time liabilities and the demand liabilities. So time liabilities is nothing but which is repaid on the maturity, whereas demand liabilities is to be paid on the demand of their customers. So whenever the customers demand it, they have to pay back, they have to repay their customers. So what is repaid on maturity? See, the best example would be the fixed deposit. Suppose I deposited rupees 3 lakhs for 10 years with the SBI. So what the SBI will do, they will invest that 10 lakh or the 3 lakh rupees, right, within these 10 years to earn more and more amount of money, but after paying a interest to us because we are depositing with them, right? So this is the best example for the best example for the time liabilities that is to be repaid on maturity. Similarly, the demand liabilities includes the current deposits, the demand drafts, etc., etc. Then there is the next concept of liquid assets. So any assets that can be converted into cash, like very easily, like gold, treasury bills, the government approved securities, the government bonds and cash reserves can be termed as liquid assets. Liquid assets is basically to maintain the flow of cash in an economy. So first is the bank rate under quantitative measures. So it is the rate at which RBI provides loan to the commercial banks without keeping any security with them, right? It is also often confused with the overnight rate. So there is one bank rate and there is overnight rate. Those are two different stuffs. Now bank rate is the rate which RBI provides loan to commercial banks without keeping any security, whereas overnight rate is the rate where bank borrows money from other banks. That is where the overnight rate takes place. Okay, so current bank rate is the 5.15%. So I'll explain further that how bank rate can be used as a tool by RBI to control the inflation. Now, what is the impact of the bank rate? So if there is increase in the bank rate, what will happen is there will be rise in the market rate of interest. Because if the RBI is increasing this 5.15% to, let's say, to 7 or 8%, what will happen is there is an interest rate hike, right? So with this hike in the interest rate, there is a high borrowing cost of capital because bank will have to pay more and more amount of money to lend to borrow more and more money from RBI. Okay, so as a result of which there will be fall in the demand. So bank will be demanding, the banks will start to demand less for the credit facility. As a result of which bank will not be able to lend more and more money to its end consumers in the form of loans, in the form of other investments and other stuffs. Okay, so when there is fall in the money supply, what will ultimately happen is the prices of the services, the prices of the goods will ultimately start falling, because bank are not able to afford more and more, bank are not able to lend more and more money to the consumer. So what they will do, they will start to spend less. If they start to spend less, the demand will be less, as a result of which the inflation will be easily controlled. In a similar way, the reserve ratios work. So under reserve ratios, we have the cash reserve ratio in the first category. So what is cash reserve ratio? Let us take an example. Now suppose I go to SBI with 1,000 rupees to deposit in the savings account, right? So what will happen is, under cash reserve ratio, that SBI will be paying a 4% of CRR. They will be maintaining a 4% of CRR with the RBI. What does that mean? That is, when I deposit 1,000 rupees in my savings account, now 40 rupees will be transferred or 40 rupees will be parked with the RBI, right? the remaining 960 balance will be saved or will be held by the State Bank of India in my case. So according to the definition, the cash reserve ratio is the average daily balance that a bank maintains with the RBTI as a share percentage of NDTL. What is NDTL? It is the net demand and time liabilities. But there has to be limit, right? It cannot be any random number. So it is the minimum limit of cash reserve ratio is 3% and the maximum limit is 15%. Now current CRR is the 4.5%. So let us try to understand how using cash reserve ratio the inflation can be controlled. So if there is rise in the CRR, so if there is rise in the CRR, what will happen is there will be rise in the cash reserves that is parked with the RBI. That means there is less money supply with the bank. Okay. So if there is less in money supply with the bank, what will bank do is bank will lend. A bank will have less money to invest and lend to its end consumers in the form of loans, in the form of investments, right? So if there is less money to lend, what will ultimately happen is consumer will have less money to spend, because if there is less money to spend because of low credit facility, there will be decrease in the demand, and if there is decrease in the demand, what will ultimately happen is there will be fall in the prices. If there is fall in the prices, that will lead to inflation, that will lead to controlled inflation. Okay, now there is statutory liquidity ratio. It is also another type of reserve ratio. One was the cash reserve ratio, then we have the statutory liquidity ratio. So in the previous case of cash reserve ratio, I was depositing 1000 and out of which 4% was parked with the RBI. But in this case, bank may not need to transfer a certain percentage of NDTL with the RBI. It can hold within themselves, right? So as we can see in this figure that companies deposit some amount with the bank. Now general public also deposit some amount of money with the bank. So what does the bank do is they will reserve a certain amount of money, that is the 18% of the NDTL, which is held as a reserve by the bank itself. So coming back to the definition now, it is the specific liquid reserve in the form of cash or gold or other liquid assets by the day's end. It has to be maintained every day, but there is no minimum limit for SLR, but there is a maximum limit which has to be maintained. The ceiling has to be maintained, that is the maximum limit of 40%, plus SLR is regulated by the Banking Regulation Act of 1949. Now current SLR rate is 18%, right? Now let us try to understand how SLR can affect inflation. If there is rise in the SLR, okay, what does that mean? That means let's say there is increase of 18, from 18 it has increased to 20 or 25% of NDTL. If there is increase of SLR, what will happen is there will be rise in the liquid assets. If there is rise in the liquid asset, that means there is less money held by the bank to lend into economy. Now if there is less money, that means there is fall in the money supply, fall in the credit facility. If there is fall in the credit facility, that means there is the lesser demand, as a result of which if the prices of the goods and the services will start automatically come down, and hence the inflation can be easily checked. Now let us try to understand the difference between the CRR and the SLR. So first is the meaning. So CRR is the percentage of the money which the bank has to keep with the Central Bank of India in the form of cash, whereas SLR, the bank, in the case of SLR, the bank has to keep a certain percentage of their NDTL in the form of liquid assets. So CRR was the hard cash, whereas SLR is the liquid asset as specified by the RBI, right? Then what is the form? It is in the form of the cash, and in the case of SLR it is cash and other assets like gold and government securities. Then there is what is the effect. What does the CRR does? It controls the excess money of flow, in the economy. Then what is SLR? It helps in meeting out the unexpected demand. So let's say CRR has to be maintained by the bank with the RBI, right? But in the case if the customer starts demanding, if the consumers needs to withdraw their money, so how will they repay their customers, right? There has to be some kind of reserves. So in that case SLR helps out. So it helps in meeting out the unexpected demand of any depositor by selling the bonds. So how is it maintained? It is maintained with the Central Bank of India, whereas SLR is maintained within the bank itself. Now who regulates it, or how does it regulate it? So it regulates the liquidity in the economy, whereas SLR regulates the credit growth in the economy. Now moving on, we have the liquidity adjustment facility. Okay, so liquidity adjustment facility, as it clearly states that it is used to control or maintain the liquidity within the market. Okay, so what does that mean? It manages the liquidity and the financial stability in the financial markets. So it consists of overnight as well as term repos, reverse repos, standing deposit facility rates. So what ultimately is happening here is RBI is controlling the liquidity within the economy. There can be several categories, out of which one is the repo rate, to control the flow of liquidity within the market, right? So it is formed, the liquidity adjustment facility was formed on the result of recommendations from the Narasimhan II committee on the banking sector reforms 1998. Okay, so under the liquidity adjustment facility, the number one is the repo rate, right? So how does repo rate helps in controlling the inflation? But before that, let us understand what repo rate exactly is. So as we can see in the picture, that she is the former chairman of SBI and he is the former governor of RBI. So under repo rate, what bank has to do, what SBI has to do is, they will be giving securities to and agree to repurchase them at a later date. What the governor or what the RBI will do is, they will in turn give the cash, right? So let's say RBI is providing 800 crores of rupees to SBI at the rate of 8% for a period of 6 months. So what SBI will do is, they will be selling their securities to access that 100 crore rupees from RBI, right, at the rate of 8%. So in this case, the RBI is earning some amount of interest. Okay, so how does the repo rate will impact the inflation? Let us try to understand that. So if there is a rise in the repo rate, what will happen is, there will be a rise in the borrowing cost of capital on the bank's end. If there is rise in the borrowing cost of capital, what will ultimately happen is, there will be fall in the demand for credit by the bank. If there is fall in the demand for credit, they will be lending lesser amount of money. If they are lending lesser amount of money, that means there is fall in the money supply. And if there is fall in the money supply, ultimately what means is, there will be less demand on the consumer's end as well, if they are on the consumer end. So what will happen is, if the consumer have less amount of money, they will be spending less. If they are spending less, ultimately the prices will fall and hence the inflation will be controlled easily. So current repo rate is the 4.9%. Moving on, we have reverse repo rate. In the previous case of repo rate, RBI was earning some amount of interest after providing a loan to commercial banks, right? But in the case of reverse repo rate, RBI is paying interest to bank in return of cash. So this is used when there is excess amount of money supply in the market. So to control that money supply, RBI infuses cash within themselves and they pay interest to the bank, so that bank also earns some amount of money. So it is the rate at which RBI borrows money from the commercial banks for a short term period. Now current reverse repo rate is the 3.35%. Now let us try to understand how reverse repo rate will affect the inflation. So if there is rise in the reverse repo rate, that means there is more amount of funds that is parked with the RBI. That means there is the decrease in the money supply. Again, if there is decrease in the money supply, banks will have less money to lend. If they have less money to lend, ultimately consumers will be getting less amount of money. And if consumers are getting less amount of money, they will not be able to spend more. If they are not able to spend more, the demand will fall and ultimately the inflation will be checked. Now, we have standing deposit facility rate. So it is the rate at which surplus liquidity is parked with the RBI, right, on an overnight basis. So let us try to understand the difference between reverse repo rate and the standing deposit facility rate. So reverse repo rate is for the short term, whereas SDF facility is on an overnight basis, right. The SDF is recommended by the expert committee to revise and strengthen the monetary policy framework under the chairmanship of Urjit R. Patel in the January 2014. Now, under this SDF facility, RBI need not give any kind of collaterals for liquidity absorption. So that is one point to be highlighted. Now the current SDF rate is 4.65%. Then we have the marginal standing facility rate. So it is basically the last resort of borrowing when all the liquidity adjustment facility is exhausted. That means they have exhausted the option of reverse repo rate, they have exhausted the option of repo rate, they have exhausted the option of SDF as well. So this is the penal rate at which the bank can borrow money from the central bank. Also, it is always fixed above the repo rate. Plus, it can be borrowed only on overnight basis and available to scheduled commercial banks. What are scheduled commercial banks? Which are regulated by the Banking Regulation Act. Now, the maximum amount, since it is very risky, so the maximum amount under marginal standing facility rate is 2% of NDTL. Now, current marginal standing facility rate of interest is 5.15%. Now, let us try to understand what is the impact of MSF. Since it is very volatile kind of borrowing that is done on the bank's behalf, so let us try to understand the impact there. So, if there is increased rate of MSF on an overnight basis, what will happen is borrowing becomes expensive for the banks. If the borrowing becomes expensive, ultimately even if at the cost of overnight basis, the loans will get expensive for the borrowers due to the low obtainability of the rupee. Now, if the borrowers has to pay more and more amount of money to avail the loan facility, what will ultimately happen is there will be less spending and investment. Plus, as a result of less spending and investment, there will be less demand, and due to the less demand, ultimately the inflation will be checked. So now let us try to understand the difference between MSF and the bank rate. So bank rate is the rate at which RBI grants long-term loans, right? That it is a key point. RBI grants long-term loans to commercial banks, while MSF rate is a rate at which the commercial banks borrows fund on an overnight basis. That is in the case of bank rate, it was a long-term loan, while in the case of MSF rate, it is the overnight loan from the central bank. Now, what is the difference between the repo rate and the bank rate? So, bank rate is the rate which is charged against loans offered by the central bank to commercial bank, whereas repo rate is charged for repurchasing the securities sold by the commercial bank to the central bank, right? Plus, there is no collateral involved while charging the bank rate, but in the case of repo rate, there has to be some kind of collateral like securities, like bond agreements, like other treasury bills. Now there is repo rate. Repo rate is always lower than the bank rate. We all know that, as we have seen in the previous statistics. So naturally question arises, then why there is MSF when there is already a repo rate, a facility available to the banks? As I've already mentioned that MSF is in the case of MSF, I'm extremely sorry, because of the power cut I had to pause the video in between. So let us continue with the further slides. So why MSF is needed even if there is a repo rate? As I've already mentioned that repo rate, when all the facility under LAF is exhausted, then only MSF can be taken as a last resort, right? So also there are situations when there is no cash flow in the market between the banks, that is all the resorts to borrow the money has ended. Also, MSF is also needed to stabilize the volatility of the overnight interbank lending rates. Now let us try to understand the difference between MSF and the repo rate. So the criteria, I have mentioned some of the criteria here. Let us try to look them one by one. So first is the MSF. So the first criteria is the purpose. What is the purpose of MSF? So the purpose of MSF is to help the banks handle their overnight liquidity crunches, whereas in the case of repo rate, the purpose of the repo rate is to fulfill the short-term financial requirements of the banks. Then what is the duration? The loans under MSF are usually for the one day, for an overnight basis, whereas in the case of repo rate, it is the have a duration of 1 to 15 days. So what is the eligibility criteria for the MSF? So only scheduled banks can avail the facility of MSF offered by the RBI, whereas in the case of repo rate, only commercial bank can avail the facility of loans under the repo rate. So what are the, if there is collateral involved or not, let's see that. Right, so under MSF, the collateral securities are usually the government securities, whereas in the case of repo rates, the collateral securities are usually the bank's own securities. Okay, moving on, then we have the open market operations. As I've already mentioned, that open market operations are nothing but the selling and buying of the government securities in the open market in order to expand or contract the amount of money in the banking system. So how does open market operations helps in inflation? Let us try to understand that. So when RBI sells the government securities in the market, then the bank purchases it. So when the bank purchase those security, what will have is they will have a reduced ability to lend to their clients. So when they have reduced ability, when they have a reduced credit facility with themselves, what will happen is there will be reduced surplus cash in the economy. So if there is lesser amount of cash in the economy, what will ultimately happen is people will not have more money to spend. If they do not have more money to spend, the demand will fall and ultimately inflation will be checked. In a similar way, when RBI purchases the securities, the commercial banks finds them with more surplus cash, and this would create more credit in the system. So this is basically when inflation has already been checked, but it has started to move towards the deflation or maybe disinflation category, right? So for controlling the inflation, we may say that RBI will sell the government securities, whereas for controlling the deflation, RBI will purchase the government securities. Now we have already discussed all the quantitative measures of the RBI to control the inflation. So moving on, we will be dealing with the qualitative measures. So what are the qualitative measures? These are also known as the selective instruments. Plus these are used for discriminating between the various uses of credit. So what is various uses of credit? For example, let's suppose that RBI can favor export over import or essential over the non-essential credit supply. That means RBI may direct the bank to favor export to favor export in terms of giving them money so that they can invest more in their business, so then they can help in generating more and more amount of employment in the economy, also which will helpful in the controlling the inflation, right? Now first measure under qualitative measures are moral suasion. So what is moral suasion? It is basically the suggestions to the commercial banks from the RBI that helps in restraining the credits in the inflationary period, right? RBI implies pressure on the Indian banking system without taking any kind of strict action for the compliance with the rules. For instance, RBI may direct banks not to give out certain loans to certain industries or certain sectors, right? For example, suppose now maybe tomorrow or maybe 1 month later, I plan to open a manufacturing firm for robots, right? So if RBI feels that there is lesser demand or there is less necessity in an robotic manufacturing investment, but we should be focusing more on the agricultural sector, then what will RBI do is RBI will direct the bank to invest money in the agricultural sector and not on the robotics firm. So that is how moral suasion takes place, right? It includes the advice, suggestion, request and persuasions with the commercial banks to cooperate with the central bank. Then we have the consumer credit regulations. So before moving on, let us try to understand if what will happen if moral suasion is taken one of the measure. So as I have mentioned, if RBI feels if there is need of agriculture, there is investment in the, if there is need in the agricultural sector, so what will happen is banks will start to invest more money in the agricultural sector. As a result of which, the robotics, in my case, the robotics industries will take a hit, isn't it? So if I have lesser money to invest, then I will have lesser money to produce as well, as a result of which there will be lesser products available in the market, which would ultimately lead to the fall in the demand since there is less supply on my end. As a result of which the prices will automatically start coming down, and hence the inflation could be easily checked. Then there is consumer credit regulations. So consumer goods includes computers, washing machines, which are easily available, isn't it? Which are used for a daily basis to fulfill our daily needs. Now we all know that let's take an example of any e-commerce website. So e-commerce website, within a gap of few days, they gave us the facility of sales, right? What is sale? Basically they are giving us a product at a discount rate, isn't it? So what we'll do is, if we have more amount of money with us, we'll be looking for that sale opportunity with the e-commerce website. And what we will do is, nowadays it is also readily available to avail the facility of EMIs without any rate of interest. So what we will do is, we will be spending that money in the consumer goods to fulfill our needs ultimately, but due to which the demand will be increasing since it is already giving the benefits, it is giving more and more profits to the industries. So ultimately what will happen is the demand will increase. So if the demand will increase, price will start rising. So what RBI does is, when there is a high demand for the durable consumer goods, RBI may direct the bank to, or RBI may take its own measures to control the inflation. It does in its two ways, by directing the bank. So one of them is the increasing the down payment. Now let's say I go to any kind of showroom, let's say any luxury motorcycle showroom. I went to buy Harley Davidson. So if I went to buy Harley Davidson with a down payment of just 1 lakh rupees, okay, just an example. So I am giving a down payment of 1 lakh rupees and I can avail the Harley Davidson bike. But if RBI increases the down payment, what I have to do is, I'll have to pay more amount of money as a down payment. If I have to pay more amount of money as a down payment, I will have lesser amount of money to invest in the other sectors, to spend on the other facilities, isn't it? So if we have lesser amount of money to spend on the other facilities, what will ultimately happen is, we will have less demand because we are already parking more amount of money with the down payment itself. Okay. So the next method will be reducing the number of installments of the repayments. So as I've already mentioned, that e-commerce websites are giving a facility of repayment using EMI for a longer period of time. So if the period of time or the period of EMI is extended, let's say for 12 or 16 months, what we will have is, we will be spending a fraction of amount for a certain period of time, right? For 16 months, for 18 months. But if we are spending a fraction of amount, then will we have more money parked with us to spend on other side as well. So if we have more money to spend on other sides, we will be demanding more and more stuffs. And if we demand more and more stuff, ultimately the price of the products and the services will be rising. So as a result of which, what RBI does is, they will reduce the number of installment of payments. So if they reduce the number of installment of repayment, then we will have to pay more and more amount of money to fulfill that EMI obligations. So if we are spending more on the EMIs, we will be having less money with us to spend on the other side, as a result of which the inflation can be easily checked. Then we have the rationing of credit. So allocating of loans for each business is called the rationing of credit. It is a situation where the central bank denies credit to the borrowers who want funds and are willing to pay a higher rate of interest, right? It is introduced when the flow of credit is to be checked. This is the key term here. It is introduced when the flow of credit is checked, particularly for the speculative activities, right? Now the upper credit limit can be fixed and banks have to stick to that limit. So now, for example, nowadays it is very, in today's trend that people have started to buy the robo-maids for their luxurious needs in order for the housekeeping facilities. So we all know that robotic maids are very luxurious goods. They are not the basic requirements. So what the RBI will do is, RBI will direct the bank to lend lesser amount of money for the robotics production. So what will happen if there is lesser amount of lending, if there is lesser amount of investment, So the production will be less, and if there is less production, there will be less demand in the market. If there is less demand in the market, the prices will automatically start to fall. Ultimately, the inflation can be easily checked. So rationing of credits helps in the lowering the bank's credit exposure to unwanted sector. As I've given the previous slide as well, the example of agricultural sector and the robotics, in the similar way, it helps in the bank's credit exposure to the unwanted sector. Now, robotic maids are not the prior necessities. We have, major problems ahead of us, which is the drought, famine. In the case of agriculture, then we have the problem of employment generation. So RBI has to focus on the more priority sectors first. So typically, three kind of measures are adopted in order to implement the rationing of credit. So first is the imposing upper limit on the credit available to the big firms or the industries. Then charging a higher on the progressive interest rate. So if the interest and if there is higher and progressive interest rate, then there will be more cost of borrowing. If there is more cost of borrowing, there will be decrease in the money supply. If there is decrease in the money supply, there is decrease in the demand, and ultimately inflation will be checked. Then the third measure is the offering credit to the weaker sections at the lower internal rates. Then moving on, we have margin requirements. So margin requirement is the certain proportion of the loan amount that is not financed by the bank. Again, the key term here is the proportion of the loan amount which is not financed by the bank. So for this, even 80 to 90% of the loan can be allotted, but not 100%. Let's take an example for this. Suppose a person mortgages his house worth rupees 1 crore for investment in the robotics industry. Now you can also take any example of any other industries. I have taken the example of robotics because it is trending now. So now, if a person mortgages his house worth 1 crore rupees for investment in the robotics, then the bank may grant or may sanction a loan of 80 lakh rupees, right? For a loan of 80 lakh rupees. So this 20 lakh rupees is the margin requirement. Okay, so how does margin requirement is requirements affects the inflation? Let us try to understand that. So if there is change in the margin, there will be change in the loan size. If there is change in the loan size, there will be lesser or more amount of investment according to the particular need. So if there is if there is lesser amount of investment, ultimately the production will be decreased. If the production is decreasing, the demand will decrease, followed by inflation will be easily checked. So that brings us to the end of the slides. So now let us go through the questions from the slides that I have discussed in the previous time. Okay, so first is the which of the following concept is the opposite of inflation? As I've already mentioned, deflation is the opposite of inflation. Then second number question is, when inflation is a result of an increase in the price of factors of production, then the result is cost, then the result is dash. So the key term here to be noted is when the inflation is the result of increase in the price of the factors of production. That means it is associated with the supply side factors. And when it is associated with the supply side factors, it is called as cost push inflation and not demand pull inflation. Now, the Reserve Bank of India can take the measure of dash to control the inflation within the country. So just now I have mentioned that the RBI can use the measure of rationing of credit to control the inflation within the country. Okay. So then we have the current repo rate as of May 2022 is dash. So it is 4.9%. It is a factual question. Plus there is the RBI introduced LAF facility on the recommendation of which committee? We all have seen that the RBI introduced LAF facility on the basis of the recommendation of the Narsimham II committee. So that brings us to the end of the slide. Thank you so much for being with me, and I hope you enjoy a great day. Thank you.